You ever wake up thinking you're about to have a normal day, just coffee, maybe a little yard work, and instead you end up smack in the middle of what feels like a bad TV drama, but it's your real life? Yeah, that was me not too long ago. Let me set the scene. I'm calling the police to arrest you right now. That's what Laura Williams was screaming right on my lawn, mind you, jabbing her finger at the old oak tree like she'd caught me burying bodies under it. All because my tree apparently had the audacity to grow past 5 feet. 5 feet. That's her new HOA law or whatever fantasy rules she was running with. Funny thing is, my house isn't even in the HOA. Never has been. I've got every bit of paperwork you'd ever need to prove it, but that didn't matter to her. What really got me, though, was the way she was peering into my house eyes, scanning every corner like she was casing the place for a heist. You ever get that cold feeling where you know something's off, but you can't quite put your finger on it? That's where I was standing barefoot, coffee mug in hand, getting accused of high crimes by a lady in a pantsuit. Now let me back up a sec, because if you've ever moved somewhere new hoping for peace and quiet, you'll get this. My name's Ben Mitchell, and after too many years busting my butt at work, I'd finally scraped up enough for my own slice of heaven, a little white fence, tiny garden piece after a lifetime of overtime and microwave dinners. Maple Grove was supposed to be that sanctuary. And then came the Saturday morning showdown. 7:30 sharp, my doorbell rings because of course it does when you're trying to sleep in for once. There's Laura standing stiff as a board, clutching a stack of documents thicker than my mortgage. Everything about her screamed official business, the kind of person who acts like she's got a badge just because she found the clip-on version at Staples. She introduces herself, all formal vice president of Maple Grove HOA, says my name Ben Mitchell, like she's reading from an arrest warrant. You're in violation of community standards, she says. That voice, I've heard it before in interrogation rooms in people who are used to being the hammer, not the nail. So I play it cool. I ask what violations. She lists them off, each one more ridiculous than the last front door paint color trees. 2 tall mailboxes black, apparently that's the worst of all sins here. And I tell her politely, as I can, "Ma'am, I'm not part of your HOA. I even show her my paper's actual signed documents. She barely glances at them, just shakes her head and tells me I don't understand the recent municipal restructuring. Now there's a mouthful. According to her, some emergency city ordinance last month swept my property into the HOA, all for community safety. She says it so smoothly, like she's rehearsed the script 100 times. Then she drops the big one, 48 hours to correct violations, or it's $500 a day in fines. I ask for real proof like any sane person would. She dodges, says all documentation is available through proper channels. Then she's scanning my living room again, like she's counting windows for a fire escape plan. I'll be back this afternoon for a more thorough inspection, she says. I cut her off, remind her she needs to give 24 hours written notice. That finally makes her blink. She doubles down, says emergency rules give her immediate inspection rights. Then slips in some cryptic remark about the previous owners being very involved. You know that feeling when you realize the other person isn't going to stop no matter what you do? That was Laura. And when I saw her car parked across the street later, just watching my house for an hour, that cold feeling crept up my spine again. That night, she knocks again, this time for a compliance check on my exterior lighting. I tell her this is harassment, point out her fake authority. She tries to barge her way inside, peering past me like she's casing the joint for a robbery. I tell her flat out, bring real city officials or get lost. She backs down barely. That's when Mrs. Johnson, my neighbor, hustles over. Sweetest lady you'll ever meet, but her hands are shaking. She says, "You be careful, Mr. Mitchell. The HOA forced 2 families out last year. Turns out both families, Andersons and Petersons, got buried under fines, random complaints, city inspectors, until they finally sold their homes for pennies on the dollar. Guess who bought both the HOA president's nephew's investment company? Yeah, that happened. At that point it clicks. This isn't random. This is a game, and people like Laura are the ones rolling the dice." The next day, Laura's back. She's all smiles, pretending to be friendly, but it's the kind of smile you give when you're sizing someone up for a coffin. She asks about my work schedule, fishing for when the house is empty. Drops veiled threats about complications if I don't cooperate. When she walks away, she stops at the corner to call someone, her whole posture screaming, reporting in. Later that afternoon, she's back with a camera and tape measure, parading around my yard, barking out official HOA business loud enough for the whole block to hear. She's photographing everything, door, mailbox, trees, writing it all down in her little notebook like she's building a case for trial. And here's where it starts getting seriously creepy. She asks about getting access to the inside for interior compliance verification. Claims the emergency ordinances say so. I tell her not happening without a warrant. She smirks, says, we can work something out. It feels less like a negotiation and more like a threat. Next day I wake up to official-looking violation notices pasted everywhere, mailbox, front door, even the garden gate. The fines are stacking up: $500 for mailbox, $300 for lighting, $400 for unapproved landscaping. I call the city, and the clerk is baffled. There are no such emergency ordinances, and HOAs can't just make up fines like that. Armed with the truth, I wait for Laura. When I confront her, she flounders, says the ordinances are still being processed, can't provide any documents. I demand the real paperwork, office addresses, case numbers. She's got nothing. Tries to guilt trip me about making this more complicated than necessary. That night, Laura is on the street again, making calls, taking photos, pointing at my house. She confronts me with made-up complaints about suspicious activity. I ask for names. She hides behind community privacy. Then she warns that the HOA will escalate if I don't comply. Now let me tell you something. If you ever feel like you're being watched, you probably are. Laura wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was orchestrating something, and it was getting bigger. What I didn't know until later was that Laura had an entire operation going with her boss, Richard Morrison. They weren't just harassing me. They were plotting to frame me. The plan: plant fake evidence, call the police force me to sell the house under a cloud of criminal suspicion. They'd done it before. 3 families had been ruined this way already. What Laura didn't count on was that my job wasn't just some city paper pusher gig. I'm Detective Ben Mitchell, Metro Police Department. Yeah, undercover in my own house with surveillance running in 3 different places. While she thought I was leaving for work, I'd slip into my garage and watch every move she made on camera. I'd already flagged her calls, and her inspection was being recorded from 5 angles, some of it by a neighbor who'd had enough of her games. So the next morning, Laura's outside waiting for me to leave. She makes her big move, calls 911, screaming about violence in my house. Police show up. Laura produces the emergency access key the previous owner left with the HOA. She walks right in with the cops, straight into my sting operation. While the officers check the place, Laura plants a little bag of white pills and a fake police evidence bag in my kitchen, thinking she's sealing my fate. What she doesn't know is she's on camera every second. She wraps up her performance, walks out the door. Bam! There I am, standing 10 feet away, full detective uniform, badge out. What exactly were you doing inside my house, I ask. You should have seen her face, pale as a ghost, stumbling for words. Tries to play innocent, but she's still got the bag of fake evidence in her hand. Dispatch, this is Detective Mitchell, badge 4721. Immediate backup to 247 Maple Street. Suspect in custody for breaking and entering evidence, tampering, and filing false police reports. That was the beginning of the end for Laura. She cracked. Right there on the lawn, blurted out everything: Morrison's name, the list of families they'd targeted, the whole operation. By the time backup rolled up, half the neighborhood was out with their phones recording her confession. It was over. Morrison tried to run damage control, calling Laura while she was in the back of a squad car. We got the whole call on tape. He confessed to everything: racketeering, fraud, conspiracy. Said they'd been running this scam for years, forcing out families, buying up properties, laundering it all as HOA business. Real peach, that guy. What happened next? Well, you probably saw it on the news. Courtrooms packed, reporters everywhere. Laura and Morrison both got the book thrown at them: federal prison, restitution to every family they'd ripped off. The HOA was dissolved, new board put in by the state city council members, investigated. But the best part. That first night after the trial, I sat on my porch, cup of coffee in hand, watching the neighborhood, really seeing it for the first time in months. Kids riding bikes, dogs barking, no one worried about some pantsuit storming up with a clipboard. Mrs. Johnson brought me cookies. The Andersons sent a thank you letter. It actually felt like home again. You know, people always talk about power, who has it, who abuses it. But real power, it's just standing your ground, telling the truth, and refusing to back down when you know you're right. Doesn't matter if it's a so-called HOA president or some neighbor on a power trip. In the end, the law is the law, and nobody's above it. So let me throw this out there. Ever had to stand up to bullies in authority? Ever been railroaded by some ridiculous rule or fake official? Drop your story in the comments. Do you think justice was served here, or did Ben Mitchell go too far? Where do we draw the line between protecting a neighborhood and turning it into a private fiefdom? Let's hear your take on it. And hey, keep your locks changed, your paperwork handy, and your eyes open. Because you never know when the next Laura Williams is going to come knocking thinking she runs the world.